our good friend and colleague Kalyan, who is in the call today. And the topic is anyone can become a UX designer. So Prasad, Kalyan's question is around the same topic. Kalyan is here also. He can also give us a little bit of backstory.
Awesome. So, just before I start, Roshni, are we live?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Awesome. So, the other day, and I'm going to share my screen, if somebody allows me to share my screen, that is. But what is interesting is the other day I came across this post, and it's and I've seen similar versions of these posts online over a period of time. And where people say, listen, UX design is a discipline. You can't just say that I'm going to become a designer overnight. There's a process, there's a system, and you have to know how to do it properly. And, normally you would see comments on the other side is like, oh yeah, you're being kind of exclusive. You want to be exclusive or whatever, you're trying to scare people and all that stuff. So I'm very curious because Kalyan comes from a slightly different perspective than I do. So Kalyan, what prompted you to write this post?
Yeah, I think I can give a little backstory there. So
I'm just sharing the post.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I think one thing I last week or I think 2 weeks back, I went to a doctor with one of my friend. And then again, he has some condition. So then my friend took some leverage with the doctor and said that, hey, give me this medicine, right? Or okay, let's do this procedure for it. Then doctor sarcastically smiled at him and said, hey, I am the doctor and you came up with the pain. Now I need to tell you what to do. So that's where then he said, when we also do projects and everything with a lot of clients here at UX Reactor, a lot of people, when we see that, again, some of the PMs say that, hey, we can do research, right? You do UI design, we can do research, right? Because we know how to talk to people and we do research. And some of the clients that we worked with, some of the PMs or some of the engineering people that we worked with, they also come to us and say that, hey, here are the wireframes. Can you make it beautiful? Here are the workflow. Can you make some of those stuff, right? That's where I said, hey, if someone as a doctor, right, spending time in learning things how to do, getting trained, and then again, that's where they do apprenticeship, and that's where they get into the job and everything. Still, as a designer, for us also is a very similar profession, right? Let's take if you're building something on an ambulance management or anything on health services. So you need to consider all the variables because they are lives at stake. So that's where how much doctor needs to take that care to do the treatment to get that pain out. Same thing as a designer, we need to do. But when I talk to people, when I talk to a lot of people, like designers outside during when I interview people, they say that, hey, this is what my PM tell, and I go execute it, right? And sometimes my PM gives me the whole sketches. Now I go use my design systems. I build some of these stuff, right? That's where, for me, it came from the pain from the profession because it got commoditized. Because now slowly, what is happening initial is now as a design as a profession, as a UI design as a profession, or a design as a profession is getting commoditized. That's where I think I wrote it with a little bit pain, say that, hey, this is not what it is. Not everyone can do research, everyone can't do a design, because it needs specific skill set, mindset, and also practice and exposure for different things to do it right, to get that impact. So yeah, I think, yeah, overall, again, it came out from a pain rather than just showcasing it for this.
Interesting. So I completely agree with that, and I've kind of had a similar pain. But I want to run through some thoughts about that specific topic, just so that people understand, well, what is design and what is the scope? Because a lot of times, and even within our community, we have similar discussions because folks come back and say, listen, my product manager tells me what to do and I just do it. And at the end of the day, then how are we growing our careers? How are we kind of moving forward and shaping the future of the product or whatever, right? So that's a big challenge. So I'm going to share a couple of data points, and then hopefully that will kind of get us to start thinking about, what it is, right? So at a very high level, I just like to think about aviation as an industry. So during World War I, if we had to think about how aviation worked, you had these little planes. This is like the beginning of the aviation, boom. So you had these little planes, and people weren't even sure that aeroplanes could change wars or whatever. Pilots would literally have bombs in their cockpits, and as they're flying, they'll take the bomb out and throw it down. That's how they would bomb the place. And what was interesting was at the start of the war, it took about 1 week to train a pilot and 5 hours of solo time. That was what it was at the beginning. And this is literally what the cockpit used to look like for a plane. Okay. Now, if you are supposed to look at it, it takes anywhere between 2.5 years to 3.5 years for somebody to just certify as a pilot. All right. And it takes thousands of hours of practice before somebody is allowed to even, go out on a mission, right? And this is what the cockpit looks like today. Okay. So what is interesting is when you think about design, it's the same deal. 20 years ago, when we started off as our careers, 20, 25 years ago, it was very common. There was just like, HTML, and there was, this whole thing of this something called the internet, and everybody wanted to be trying out internet. Okay. And there was no skills. There was no training program. There was very little theory, how to do it, how to execute. There was literally no knowledge out there in terms of how to build products from a UX perspective. And so, but somebody had the idea that we need to make the page look beautiful, because making it beautiful would give us more users. And so that's literally how it happened. 20 years ago, you would have somebody who would be good at art or drawing or whatever, and they'd say, listen, I'm going to shift over and I'm going to become a designer. But when you think about it today, the average number of modalities have increased dramatically. So now today you're talking just in terms of screens, you're talking desktops, you're talking even within desktops, you have probably 5 or 6 major screen sizes that are out there. Then you have laptops, tablets, smartwatches, TVs, the augmented reality, Internet of Things. You have so many devices that have literally come out. And so if somebody would say like, listen, I'm going to take a 20 years ago designer and I'm going to recruit the same way to build a product today, it's a very different environment. The other thing that when you start thinking about it is, it's essentially in those days, it was all about, how would you create a product? How would you focus on the visuals? How do you make it look beautiful and stuff like that? Today, that's not the case. It's about how do you make revenue? How do you get people to use a product? How do you get people to engage with it? How do you make the product so important that, to somebody's life that they're using it, they're coming back to it again and again, right? Now, for example, if you go to Facebook, there's solid psychological principles, because literally the act of playing the next video, as soon as you've viewed the current video in Facebook, makes it so addictive. Even if you look at YouTube Shorts, it's the same principle. So there is a lot of science and there's a lot of systematic thought that goes into it. And just so that you understand, the level of science and systematic thought, I'm going to talk to you, I'm going to share this. This is something, again, every designer is supposed to be aware of this. So this is something called UI patterns. Okay. And this is not the best up-to-date pattern library that is available out there. I would say it's still 5 to 6 years delayed. It's behind. But just looking at it, how many different ways do you think you can design a text box? Okay, so let's get into getting input. Okay, so you have just for password to get input. Okay, you have about 6 different ways that they have documented with pros and cons, when to use it, what are the pros, what are the cons, what are the different ways that you're designing it, and this whole science. You should also be aware of, well, how can you attack this design? Okay, and there is science around that, and then they're saying, okay, what are the general guidelines, what is the rationale for doing the password this way? Okay, now when you think about, okay, what is the other ways that you're doing the password? Okay, well, here's another way, right, where while you're typing, you're getting the feedback on the side. Now what is the other way? So you can see there are so many different ways of entering the password, user IDs, and there's no one standard way. And each of these ways has its own pros and cons for doing it. So just on this website, if you're curious, I would strongly encourage you, and this is what I say when you're starting to learn design, come to this site and spend at least an hour a day. Okay. And start looking at what all these patterns are. And you'd realize there are more than, just on this website, there are more than 2,700 different patterns that this website has documented. Okay. And I'm saying this is a little bit out of date. So every year you probably have a few hundred new patterns that are created, that are designed. Okay, completely new patterns. And so when you create these few hundred patterns, now you have to start thinking about those patterns too. Why do you use a pattern? When do you use it? So that's one aspect, right? Then there is another aspect. So there's this website, which this is something that I find is amazing. It's called Behance. Okay. What they do is they do lots of research, and they take all that research and they synthesize it. Now, this is a paid website. This is a premium paid website. But then they will tell you like exactly like, well, how should you do, what are the, how should you design a product for mobile web? What are the common usability problems? What are the issues? Because one of the most common things that everybody says is, 20 years ago, if you had a problem, they would say, well, okay, nobody knows how to do this feature, so let's go do usability testing. But today, the question that I would ask is, okay, good, you want to do usability testing, but is there any existing data? Okay, because again, if a doctor comes 20 years ago or 100 years ago, let's say you got malaria, now doctor goes into the laboratory and does research about malaria, I get it. Okay, but if today you get malaria and the doctor says, I don't know what caused it, I have to do research on that and how to kill it, I'm going to do this, that doesn't make sense. Somebody's already done that work, right? So you should be aware of that existing work. So this Behance is one of those places which is absolutely phenomenal, which puts out almost like 11 or 12,000 research studies in its repository, and it literally talks about all the different aspects. When should you use tabs? When should you use buttons? What are you, how should you use certain features? And all of these things, again, the average designer needs to be aware of, especially if you want to. And when I say average designer, it's like a designer that really wants to do something and move up in their career. So these are the things that we should be aware of, because there's already a huge body of research that's available. Right? Now, it might seem a little bit intimidating, but again, the whole point is, okay, if I just want to start off being a designer, okay, what do I need to do? Do I just need to know visual design? Actually, no, right? So there's a lot of topics, and this is where what we've done is we've curated a lot of free resources, okay? And this is what it is. So fundamentals, right? At the very basic, you need to know heuristics. You need to know how to do basic, how to ask questions, how to understand what data you're getting and how to evaluate it. How do you name your files? How do you name the different objects in your files? How do you do design patterns? How do you think about form design? These are like, this stuff is basic, right? This is just the stuff that I've highlighted. That stuff is the minimum table stakes for somebody to start designing. Okay, and then you're talking about additional stuff, which is ideation, rapid sketching, all that stuff, and then you'll have visual design stuff, topics and all that. And these are things that you would learn more to kind of start specializing and start building your body of work. And again, the one other thing I would also want to say is, okay, great, you told us all of this stuff. This is all the stuff that I learned. But really, what is the impact that design does on a product? Okay. And this is where I want to kind of talk to you about this. This is the work that's done. It's a $300 million button. Okay. So early on, when you used to have, when you had to buy airline tickets, it would say you have to log in and buy a ticket or sign up. Okay. Now, or not even airline, when you want to shop, it was the same deal. So until one designer came in and said, okay, why do we need to sign up? Okay. And I would encourage, read this article, and it's going to be really filling. It's going to be awesome. But what this guy basically said was, okay, I don't need to have the login button, just continue as guest, because anyways, I'm getting that person's credit card information. And if they want to buy some element, some stuff from me, I need the shipping address. So I will have their address and I'll have their credit card. So I still am able to identify who that individual is. And so they just said, shop as a guest, and it increased sales by $300 million. Okay. And so that is the impact that UX can have when we start thinking about careers. And so when you start thinking from your perspective about, okay, what do I need to know how to do design and stuff? I would actually agree, if we are saying my product manager is going to tell me something and I'm going to do it, we are not really doing UX to our full capabilities. Okay. What is really important is to say, listen, I need to be competent. The first thing, you can always argue that, my product manager is not going to give me the freedom to do it. But my argument is different. If you are good, you're going to have competence brings confidence, and confidence allows you to speak out and get the job done the way you want it to get done. So the first step I would say for us as designers is to really step back and say, what do I need to be competent? And how do I get that level of confidence so I can sit down and discuss with my counterparts within the product organization and drive the vision for the product as I think it should be driven. Right? And I think that is the core that I kind of get out of this when I read Kalyan's perspective. And this has also happened even within our college community members. I would say, you should talk to some of our members. They have also started doing this. They start changing the cultures in their own organization. In the beginning, we have a member, Mohan, I'm not sure if he's here, but in the beginning, he was literally being told, this is what you do, until Mohan said, this is what I've done. This is what I think is the right way to do it. And, initially they said, no, let's not do it this way. Let's do it this way. And eventually, the product guys realized the way that they wanted was wrong. And they came back to Mohan and said, can we get the original design that you showed? And they did it 2 or 3 times. And right now, Mohan is like, at the point where they come to him and say, Mohan, what is your opinion? How would you like to do it? Right. And so that changes, but it only changes when we are competent. So that is the first perspective that I would like to give. And thank you very much for making that post, Kalyan. Any questions on this? Any thoughts on this, guys? Cool. So we have some other questions. So do you want to read out the next question, Hoy?
We have Pooja.
Okay. Pooja,
she
you want to
has
go
raised-
next?
No, you just said that if I want to ask something, so like you gave example of Mohan. So I just want to ask that how can we like present our thoughts in a good way to make other person understand basically what is the thought process which we have in our mind, considering Kalyan's whatever the post he has written. So considering that, so that is the pain which all we face basically.
Right. Kalyan, you want to take that question?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the same thing. Who is the user on the other side, right? Let's take somebody at a C-level executive or somebody at a PM level. First, we need to understand. So who is the other person that we are trying to educate or show them what needs to be done, right? And you need to place different strategies at different levels. Somebody at a C level, because if you look at someone at a C level, they always look at, hey, do I get more users? I need to increase my revenue. And if you build your case in the business semantics that they can relate to, you will have a very high success probability of success there. Let's take somebody at a PMs, right? They might be thinking, hey, I need to deliver, launch stuff, do some of these things so that it will not repeat or some of those stuff. I think you need to talk into their language. Say that if you do this, now in the second version or third version, now you need to again do some of the debt that you need to do. Rather than if you take one more week to do this, right? That's where now you get more impact and you don't get again the work, right? That's where understanding who is the person that we are trying to convince or make them aware is key important. Sometimes it might be an engineering lead on the other side, right? We need to understand what their motivations are, and now we need to build our case on top of it.
I think one other strategy that has also worked is getting agreements on what is success. Okay, so I'll give you an example. So when, let's say you're talking with your PM at the beginning of the project, say, well, what is the problem you're trying to solve? The PM can say, listen, I want you to create this widget. No, why do you want me to create the widget? What is the logic? What is the problem we are solving? Maybe there are other ways I can solve it for you. Okay. So if you understand the problem, the PM says, listen, I want to get more users, and that is my problem. Okay, good. Okay. Then we also have a common understanding on who is your user. So when you start talking in terms of use cases and user behaviors and that final goal, because don't talk about the specific design, and say, okay, this is what I did in the design, but rather say, this is the goal, and this is why I believe this design will help us achieve this goal. Right? And here's the data that indicates that that is likely to happen. Okay. Now, people see that reason that comes through. And so now people understand, oh, okay, so this is what you're talking about. This is why this is a problem. Now, sometimes they may not see the problem that you're talking about. And that's okay. Because even if they don't see it and you've seen the problem and they go out and they launch the product and they realize that is the same problem you talked about, your credibility increases over time. Okay, so it's not, don't be worried like if in the beginning people don't take your feedback, they're still listening. Okay, as long as you make that argument and you give that rationale, they will listen. They may not, agree to you in the beginning, but over time you build your credibility and it works out.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Prasad. Thanks, Kalyan.
Awesome. So what's the next question, Hoy?
All right. Our next question is from Sarita, and she actually have 3 different questions.
So Sarita here. Oh yeah, there she is. Sarita, you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, hello.
Hi, Sarita.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm working in a startup company as a UX designer right now.
Hey,
But
can you
most-
turn your camera on so we can see you?
I have some issues with my network. That's the
all right.
Okay,
reason.
that's fine. Cool, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, actually, I'm working working in a startup-based company. So I don't get any opportunity to do any user research. So to showcase on my portfolio, what are the things I need to do, how to build my portfolio, like that. I'm having few questions on this topics.
Okay, interesting. So it's a very interesting question. So what Sarita is asking, just so that for those of you that may not have heard it clearly, is she's saying, listen, I'm working in a startup and I get very limited opportunities to do research. And so how does that affect my portfolio? How should I highlight in the work that I've done in my portfolio? Now, what is interesting is let me give a cooking analogy. Okay. Let's say you're cooking something spicy. Okay. Would you want to put sugar and honey into it? Not necessarily, right? It depends on what you're trying to cook. And again, I understand there's certain cultures where people will put sugar in anything, but however, by and large, the methods that you use are focused on the problem you're solving. Okay. So as long as the problem says, you know what, I need to get this job done, and you have limitations within that problem, which is I need to get stuff done within a certain amount of time, or or I don't have access to users or whatever. Now you should have a reasonable way of saying, okay, where did you make your assumptions from? Okay. Or where did you get your data from? Perhaps it's secondary data, perhaps it's somebody else that's been going and talking to the clients and getting you the data. So there are ways that you can say, okay, this is the data we got and this is what we are moving towards. So that's a perfectly fine argument to make. And again, for every portfolio, you highlight yourself differently. So if you're saying, okay, I'm a researcher, you want to focus on your research portfolio. If you're saying I'm an interaction designer, focus on your interaction. That's fine. You have your strengths. Highlight your strengths when you're doing your portfolio, because that is what is going to let the other person think about, oh, this is what this person can do really, really well. Okay. If you try to do everything in the same thing, in the same process, but you're not able to argue it or tell me why you did something in a certain time, then I'm just looking at it and saying, okay, you are just doing a checklist. So you're saying, okay, I have to do research, so I did research. I have to do a persona, so I did persona. So that's not important. Okay, if a persona is not important for the job on hand, don't do it. If research is not important for the job on hand or within the limitations you have and you can make a reasonable argument for it, don't look at it. Just say, I got research, I got data from other sources. That's fine. Okay. However, what you do need to communicate is, you need to communicate that your designs are based on some sort of data. Okay. It may not be first-hand research, but there's still some data that you're leveraging to do your work. Because that tells me that, yeah, you're thinking about the background and you're thinking about why something should be designed the way it should be. Does that answer your question, Sarita?
Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sarita. Our next question is from Charu. And she also have a couple of questions. Which is better to showcase?
Charu's here. She can ask the question herself.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Charu.
You need to, yeah.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Hi, Prasad. Hi, all.
Hey.
So, actually, the problem is that I am a little, so like when I asked the question, I was a little occupied. So I have forgotten the question that I asked. So I'll appreciate if you could ask.
All right. I'll just help you with the question. So she's asking, which is better to showcase in your work and case studies, a portfolio website or a Behance or a Dribbble profile?
See, again, it depends on what you want to communicate. Okay. And again, what is it that you're trying to communicate out of your portfolio? Okay. Now, Behance, all of these solutions struggle in some ways. Again, you have to use them correctly. So when you're looking at Behance, Behance is really good for discovering beautiful visuals. Okay. But the thing is, visuals is just one part of the UX process. There are so many other parts in there. So how do you still communicate it? So you can still do Behance, but you still need to be able to communicate the process that you're doing. Okay.
Right.
You can have your own website, but as long as you're communicating the process, you're communicating the need, you get the it still works. Okay. So the idea is, don't think about what website or whether you're working on Behance or Dribbble or whatever. That's not what is important. What is important is, are you able to effectively communicate your process and your decisions so that the other person can understand it and appreciate the work you've done.
Okay.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, and the second question I had was that so I was recently talking to a mentor. So like I found one via ADP list, and I was trying to showcase my portfolio and my resume and everything. And I have been told by a couple of people that my case studies are very text heavy.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've been told that no recruiter is going to. So you have said everything that मैंने ये research की, इतने लोगों से बात की, you made the persona and everything. So I've even heard that in your videos as well. So like I want to understand how I can communicate the thing without making, that the website or the portfolio seem like there's too much of text and less of visuals. Even if I have the diagrams, I'll explain the diagram via the text, and that people say is text heavy. So like, how do I explain the diagrams?
See, I think that's a really good question, and we all struggle with it when we start off, and especially when we, I still remember when I first learned to use Photoshop, It was like amazing for me. So I wanted to put everything in there. And when I learned HTML the first time, I wanted to put flashing stuff, dancing people, all kinds of stuff to kind of make it look jing bang. But over time, I realized simplicity is what gets the job done. Right? So I would say whenever you're presenting your case study, if you put everything there, okay, it's, the reaction that I would get if I was recruiting you and I was to look at your portfolio, I would say this person doesn't know what they're talking about. Okay. I mean, I give you a classic example is, well, maybe this is not an appropriate example to give online, but the idea is if you know what you want and what is the minimum amount of information that I need to give to get the job done, that shows me that you know exactly how the system works, right? If you're giving me everything, like I did research, I talked to 17 users, I did this, I did that, I don't care, right? At the end of the day, I want to say, what is your outcome? At the very highest level, if I'm looking at your portfolio, and I have, let us say, about 30 minutes or 40 minutes, to give to you, maybe not even 30, I'll give you maybe 4 or 5 minutes initially, okay? I'm not going to give you a lot of time because I have a lot of resumes coming in. I have 5 minutes. I'm going to look at your resume and I'm going to say, what is the outcomes that this person has driven? Okay, so I'm going to look at your core artifacts and I'm going to say, okay, then once if I like those artifacts, then I say, okay, how did they make these decisions? So then I'm going to step back. Okay, then I'm going to say, well, why did they do that? So overall, when I say when you're doing a portfolio, try to answer 4 questions when you're doing any case study. Okay, the first question is, what is the problem? Okay, the second thing is, why do you think that is a problem? Okay, the third question is, how did you solve it? And the fourth question is, how do you know you solved it? Okay, if you answer just these 4 questions, get rid of 17 users, 100 users, whatever, forget all the methodology things, right? Just talk about solving problems. Okay, and if that is interesting for me, if your problem is interesting enough for me, I will pick up the phone and I'll ask you like, okay, how did you do this research here? How did you do this here? I will ask you all those questions. Okay, so focus on just those 4 things and do your case study, reduce the amount of text and simplify, because how many, like literally if you say these 4 things, you need 4 slides, isn't it? 4 slides with 2 bullet points each and an image. That's it. Correct?
Correct. So like, how do I know I solved it?
Yeah, how do you know you solved it? So you have to be able to answer that.
Can you give me an example so that I can work around that? Like I can understand how to go about.
Okay, so let's say that, what is the problem? My problem is that I'm not getting users to sign up. Okay, for my website, let us say. Okay, and I'm a multi-billion-dollar company, but I'm not getting people to sign up for the long term. Okay, so that is my problem. Well, why is that a problem? Okay, well, the reason it's a problem is because when people don't sign up, they don't come for repeat purchases. Okay, so whenever people come for repeat, so, and I've done this research myself for a certain product, so I can tell you. So whenever people sign up, people who sign up generate about 30% more revenue for me than people who don't sign up. And 70% of my users do not sign up. Okay, good. So I know it's a big problem. And if I just solve this problem, I will be able to increase revenues by 30% for the people that sign up. Okay, that's a huge amount. Okay, so you say, well, how did I solve it? Well, the way I solved it was, I basically went in and I looked at, we identified 4 different problems. Okay, the first problem was that most people were not able to see the sign up link. Okay, the second problem was that there were a lot of usability issues within the sign up process itself. Okay, and the third process was people didn't know they had accounts, so they didn't even know that they could actually come back in and do it. So, and there was a 4th problem that I don't remember, but you have these 4 problems. Then I said, okay, if I look at these 4 problems and, I realized that problem 1 is the biggest problem because I identified 70% of the people had that problem or whatever. Okay, then I solved the problem. Okay. And this is the solution set for me. Okay. How do I know I solved it? Well, I got 10% more signups in the first week that I launched it. And,
Although
and so, and,
that is a solution for something that has been launched, but since I'm a junior as of now, I've been doing things only for a year and a half, and most of the projects that I have are personal projects. And when you join into companies, most of the projects they allot you are visual design related.
that's okay.
So
Okay, so give me a
how do
problem
I?
that you give me a project you worked in, and I'll make you answer your own question. Okay, and I think a lot of us here have the same problem, and so everybody is wondering, okay, yeah, Prasad can do it, awesome, but I may not have that case study. So you tell me, give me an example of a project that you worked on, Charu.
Okay, so the one that I've recently done is a website, a quiz flow for a design bootcamp.
Okay,
So
and why did
basically,
you do that?
I'm sorry.
Why did you do that?
So it was a personal project. I picked it up because I have been a part of a couple of boot camps myself. And there were times when some of them weren't very organized, like the quizzes, the tests, and everything weren't very organized. So, there were like too much of stuff going on. Like there was a Google form that you were taking a test on, then you're getting your result some other way, then you're being discussed, like the result and all is discussed with you some other way. So there was a scattered stuff going on. So what I wanted to do was to streamline that entire process and have like a centralized platform jahan pe you can give the test, you can view your score, you can have a dashboard with all your previous scores, and eventually aage chal ke I would also incorporate the feature of having like video calls and all that, so like you can have the boot camp in there as well
So what is the problem you were solving?
to streamline the quiz taking and accessing the results.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So that is your problem statement. The problem you were solving was, listen, whenever you are in a boot camp, you have many different ways that you can do. There's many different tools that you have to use to take a simple quiz. Okay. Now, why is that a problem?
Because I guess having so many, such unstructured system can be extra work for the admin also, like whoever is conducting the quizzes, the teachers and all also. And it can be hard for the student to keep track of everything. कि quiz कहाँ पे करनी है, result कहाँ पे आएगा. So that can probably, lead into them dropping off or getting annoyed. कि, मतलब, why do I have to do so much of work in so many different places?
Okay. So you're hypothesizing that it's a problem because people have to spend a lot of time managing all these different systems. One.
Yeah.
Two, there's frustration on the student's end. And three, there's drop-offs, student drop-offs. Okay, good. So now the next question I'll ask you is, did you see any of these problems in the real world?
Yes, in one of the boot camps that I attended. So my fellow, mates and I used to crib a lot about this thing back then.
Okay, that's your data. That's why you know it's important, because all the students in your group would complain about it. Right?
Yeah.
So that's your data. Okay. So now we have answered the first two parts. Okay. The first part is like, okay, what is the problem? Well, the problem is that you have a very varied way of test taking, because of which it was very hard for people to kind of manage the process, as well as for students to kind of understand what they have to do at what time. Okay. And the way you knew it was a problem was because you talked to a lot of people, you talked to people within your batch, and everybody had the universal problem about it. They all complained about this issue. Okay. So now you know what is the problem and why is it a problem. Okay. Now let's ask the next question. How did you solve it?
Okay. So what I have done so far is I have devised a centralized website, like a platform, jahan pe you can sign in with the credentials that you're being given by your design mentor, the bootcamp mentor. And with that you get a personalized dashboard जहाँ पे आपके सारे boot camps दिखेंगे, and you can take the quizzes regarding like those boot camps, and you can take the test right there. And वहीं पे फिर आपके next में scores आ जाएंगे, and via your profile you can also access your entire dashboard that gives you information about which test you took when, how did you perform in that, and your mentor details and all that also.
Okay. So the way you solved it was by unifying, by creating a universal platform that one showcased all your work, all the things that you're supposed to do and all the things that you have already done, right? And integrated with that was the same grading, and you created a dashboard for that, right? Now, how do you know that solved the problem?
That's the question I've been meaning to ask, that I don't know how to answer.
Now, that is where I would say the simplest way that you would know that you solved the problem was you would share it with your friends. Okay. And you talk about it, isn't it? Or what you might do is you might create an Excel sheet that you can very quickly prototype an Excel sheet lelo that combines everybody's data together and give those report cards to everybody, right? And see how they react to it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now that is the simplest thing that you could have done, and this is something that was entirely possible for you, hai na? So this is what I mean by, we do a lot of work, but what we forget is how do you get the confirmation? Like if somebody comes to me and said, I did all this work, and then I spent the last 5 minutes, I just mocked it up and showed it to 10 people. It shows me that you care about whether it worked or not. You care about your customer. Because what we say is every designer is supposed to have empathy. Empathy is not just when you're collecting the data. Empathy is also when you try to figure out, did my solution solve your problem or not?
Right.
So for me, the second part is a more important indicator whether you are going to be a good designer or not.
Yeah.
Right. And so now if you just did that, you could say, yep, this is how I solved it. These 4 points, here's what I did. This is how the problem was solved. This is why it is done. Done. You made your case.
Right. Understood.
Good. Awesome.
Thank you.
I'd love to see your portfolio now.
I'm still working on it. So once I'm done, I'll
after
definitely.
you finish it with this feedback, do share a link.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
Cool. Awesome. So who's next?
All right. Our next question is from Naveen. I'm not sure Naveen is there in the call or not. I think he is not there. So I'll just...
hey guys, can we turn on our cameras? It seems like I'm just talking to a bunch of blank screens. So Kranti is here.
Kranti is here.
There's a question that Kranti is asked. So instead of Naveen, if Kranti is already here, Kranti might as well ask this question. So go ahead, Kranti, you would ask the question.
Yeah.
Sure, sir. Thank you. Hi, everyone. So my question, like I'll just set the context like before asking my question, because everyone knows like LinkedIn is a kind of a job board, like to find a particular opportunity. So whenever I mean, check like what are the opportunities showing up in the market, like just looking at that post, even if it is posted a 15 minutes ago, I'm getting to see more than 200 and 400 applicants for a few opportunities. So that's the first time, like when I started, okay, there will be this much competition, like you need to compete with. And also another thing is there are a lot of schools, everyone saying I went through so-and-so course for 2 months or 3 months. Now I'm applying for jobs and I got this so-and-so opportunity. So those are the things which are happening. And my question is, so since, I mean, even few of my other friends from other domain are started saying like the design, designers supply has become more in the market. And also given the current market situation, everyone is looking for who is 4+ or else 5+ years of experience. And so given that all these situations, how to stand out from a group, like when you are applying for an opportunity? That's my question. And since the supply is more, like can we say like how good, I mean, the training is, I mean, what people are getting, or else whether the quality is affecting the opinion on the, like the perception on hiring designers. So those are the two questions, sir.
Right. It's a really good question. And I'm going to call in a couple of people here. Okay. So Kalyan is the design operations head for UX Reactor for the global design operation. So he's kind of responsible for, recruiting and planning and all that for, US, Colombia, and India all together. So Kalyan, what is your thought?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I also see the supply again. There's more supply of designers, and again, there's two sides of coin, right? There's still demand in the companies for a good designers, right? Even though if you increase, because I don't remember the ratio, but one thing, so 1:10 is the ideal, 1:5 or 1:10 is the ideal.
1:5.
Yeah, 1:5 is the ideal designer and engineer ratio, right? Currently, if you see, again, some of the clients that I worked with, so they have like 300, 400 engineers, and they have only 4 to 5 designers, right? So that there's still demand for designers, good designers, expertise designers in the companies, right? So again, people are taking courses, 2 to 3 months courses, and doing stuff. But again, one thing that you also mentioned, hey, people are looking for 5+, 6+ years of experience on only people. Now, how do you get into some of those companies when you have a less experience, right? At least, again, this is my perspective, at least, even though you have less expertise or less experience, but it always comes with an expertise that you have. Right, if you just try to go and again apply for jobs, somebody might be saying that, hey, 3+ experienced designers, and still you apply, you only have 2 years of experience, but the way that you showcase your portfolio, the way that you showcase the expertise will draw the eyeballs. Right, say that, hey, because they might be also looking at other people and say that a 4 years experience, this is what the expertise that this person showcased to me, but somebody within 2 years of experience, this is the expertise that somebody showcased to me, right? It always depends, at least at UX Reactor, one thing that we look at is, again, we look at the experience, but mostly we look at the expertise. Is a merit. We say that, like, somebody have 2 years of experience but still able to get the job done, right? We still get some of those people into our ecosystem.
So I think, let me ask another question, Kalyan.
Yes.
How many resumes do you get? And of them, how many do you think how many offers do you make?
Got it. I think,
let's say in a given month.
correct. I think,
what is the ratio? Just give us a ratio. Probably don't even need to give the exact numbers.
I think I think our intake is less than 2%. So that means, again, somebody, less than 1%, somebody, 100 people, again, Hoi also used to be at UX Reactor. She also knows it. Somebody, 100 people apply, we give an offer for less than, again, 1%. So,
okay.
Again, in the last year, 2022 to 2023, we got around 3,000 people applied to UX Reactor. I think we took people 5 to 6 people in we intake 5 to 6 people.
So the reason I'm saying this, and to probably talk to what Kranti is saying, I think you're absolutely right. There's a lot of design courses that are out there, right? And I mean, it's a factor, right? So there's supply and demand. There's a huge amount of demand. Like Kalyan is saying, you need to have a ratio of 1:1 designer to 5 engineers. Right now, the ratio is 1 designer to 100 engineers. Okay. There is a huge demand for design. Okay, that's number one. So there's a lot of job openings that are out there in the market. And this is a global phenomenon. It's not just in India, it's a global phenomenon. Okay, because training designers is actually, believe it or not, is a very hard process. And getting competent designers is extremely, like, it's like, you've hit jackpot. That's how it works, especially. So I can guarantee you that out of the 3,000 resumes that Kalyan probably got, he probably saw all 3,000 of them. Right? That's because that's how desperate you are for that talent. Okay. Now, that said, the question that comes is, initially, the idea was that, okay, people will have certification and that certification will help me decide. But if you look at today's certifications, right now, the certifications have become so varied and so different. There's no way to compare, like, okay, one certification with the other certification. Are they comparable also? I don't know. Right. And so one of the things that most companies will do, at least mature companies will do, is they'll ignore the certifications. Right? It's just a blanket ignoring, or like, if you say you're from an IIT or an NID or certain institutions that we respect, that we know you get good quality from, we will keep an eye out for them. But otherwise, everything else is ignored. Okay. Then the next thing we basically do is, that's also one of the complaints that we see, or discussion points that we see on LinkedIn. Everybody says, oh, I got a design task. You're making me do your business work for you for free. So why should I do that? But that's the unfortunate reality, because I don't know whether the person is capable or not, whether the person has the expertise or not. And so you might actually, and one of the most interesting things that companies do is, when you take an image, we just literally put it on Google search and we see if anybody else has done that image or not. Okay. And you'll be amazed how many people literally copy complete screens from other people. Portfolios, they'll copy from other people. Okay. That's almost about 10 to 20% of the number of people that are in there, they copy the portfolios. So that's also another issue. Right. And so when we start doing that plagiarism copy, we catch a bunch of people there. So those guys are automatically rejected. And then you have the people that are in there and they're looking at their portfolio to understand, okay, do they understand the logic? Do they understand the process? And this is where the whole question, the 4-point thing, right? So just explaining that. Most people cannot explain that. Okay. So then that is not a rejection, but that is still a red flag. It's like, okay, it's a red flag. Then I'm talking to the individual. Then you say, okay, tell me about your thought process. Tell me about your rationale. Most people cannot explain the rationale. They cannot explain the logic. So then people kind of get cleaned out of there. And then if you kind of get through all of those, then you get a task. Then you say, okay, do this task and surprise me. Right. And now I'm basically trying to see how they execute and all that. And then that's where a majority of the people also are not able to do it. Because again, if you have the expertise to do a good portfolio, then you should have the expertise to do this task. And the task is not really complex. It'll be something for 4 or 5 hours. And then, it'll be very, very simple. And then we'll just say, okay, try to do something like this, solve this problem. And we basically see, are they asking questions? Are they keeping timelines? Are they keeping me in the loop? Do they have the professional etiquettes? Do they have, like, are they able to identify the scope? Are they able to narrow down what I should do and what I should not do? The simple stuff. Right? We are not even looking at the end product. We're looking at the process that the person has done. So when you start thinking about that, the biggest challenge is this. There's a huge demand. So because of which, you have so many certifications that are floating around. And because of certifications, everybody thinks they're designers. In fact, we can show you like sample emails that we get. They say, I think I am an awesome designer. How are you an awesome designer? What is the basis for that claim? Right? You just graduated and you don't even know, and you graduated from someplace that I don't even know. Right? And I think that is where the problem is. So the problem from the company's perspective is, we don't know how to filter people. Right? And so when we start looking at, certain institutions, they don't mean anything for us. So I would say at least 90% of the certifications are meaningless in the market. Right? What matters is the quality. So once the quality is seen, then that certification starts making value to me.
Just to add there, I think similarly, if let's take, we saw one certification and we saw like 10 other people, now it forms a pattern, right? And once we see that particular certification altogether, we rightly say that, okay, this particular person who did this certification don't have that quality, so let's not waste time on it.
So I think the next part of the question that Kranti said, how do you apply for a job by standing out from the group? Right. And I think the way you stand out from the group is, number one, you need to have a body of work, right? Or, this is what I say is, for most experienced designers, we don't focus on our brand, right? You need to have a brand and you need to have content. It's not like the populist content. Okay. The populist content says, oh, they gave me this portfolio and then the portfolio is like, or they gave me this task and the task is the actual work. Why would I do that? That is populist content. That means it'll get you likes from other designers, not from employers, right? Employers are basically looking at your rationale, your logic, the way you think, the way you perceive, and the way you talk. Okay. That is really important. Okay, so having a brand is one really important thing. Now, if you're a fresher and you don't necessarily have a brand, that's okay. When you're starting off, that's okay. But when you are looking for experienced roles, you need to have that. Then the second aspect that you need to have is be parts of communities where you're actively participating, talking, discussing, and you're kind of generating value within that community. Because a lot of times people will actually call you out and like, say, hey, would you like to work with me? And this is something that's interesting. I never thought it would happen, or at least I kind of knew theoretically it would happen, but it was a surprise when it started happening. Is even within our community, people see other people's work and they say, okay, hey, do you want to come work with me? Right? And there's these referrals that happen within community. So that is really important. So when you're part of a community, participating, turning on your camera, letting the other people see you, and you are having those discussions, helping somebody, those things help. And again, for example, Kranti, I'll ask you a simple question like, how many people are you in touch with within the community and how many people will you hire, right? And most likely the people that you would say, I want to hire if you had an opportunity in your company are the people that you're in touch with, isn't it? And so that's the same thing as like building that community. And the other aspect is leveraging introductions, right? Now, this is a very interesting thing where we have a member, Neha, and there was a job role that was published by this company out of the UK, and they were hiring in Pune, right? Now, what was interesting was she's my student. I know that she's done a really good job. And I also know the hiring manager that's hiring in the UK, right? Now, all I have to do is like, okay, I know she's good and I know that she can get the job done for this person. So I just made the introduction. So what Neha did was she sent an email to this person saying, hey, I'm Prasad's student and this is what I've done. Do you have this, can I apply for this role? And literally within a day or two, she got the call from the recruiter, right? And so there's opening the doors kind of a thing. It's like within the network, see who can introduce you, who can talk, and then you kind of go out and then get that introduction. That's another way that works out for you. Okay. And then when you do your portfolio, again, think about those 4 questions. Answer those 4. Don't answer more questions, right? Just those 4 questions and keep your portfolio clean. And when you keep your portfolio clean, people understand that you know what you're talking about. Okay. Does that answer your question, Kranti?
Yeah, yes, sir. Like the one thing I still need answer from you is it's like I mean, for example, recently I will give a scenario like recently Sequoia Capital, they posted a opening. Like that's the first time I saw like a VC is offering a role for UX designer. So I tried to reach out to them like through multiple channels because I know like they're into investing into a lot of startups and all.
Right.
Why would they need this role? So I was curious. I tried to reach out to multiple channels, but I didn't get any response from them. So that's where my question started, like how to stand out from the group. So
I mean, the fact of the matter is everybody is going to be applying for those.
Yes.
Right. And again, Sequoia, I'm assuming they probably advertised in Bangalore. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And Sequoia is a well-known brand. And so there is the intensity of competition for that role is going to be pretty hard.
Yes.
Right. And so this is where, you want to just basically look up and say, who do you know who can introduce you to somebody who knows?
Yes.
Okay. Or the other way that you can do is you can basically, this is a very simple technique, but and what I say when you're connecting to somebody on LinkedIn, don't just connect to them, just give a little introduction. So here's an example. Find somebody on Sequoia who's doing stuff. Look at their posts, their LinkedIn posts, right? And try and comment on their posts and see if you can engage with them. Right. And then you move it to a personal or private conversation. That's another way that you can open doors for yourself. Okay.
Yes.
Good.
And also like one thing happened, like when I tried, I happened to get an interview with like the Landed co-founder. It's a YC funded startup based out of Hyderabad. So during interview questionnaire, they asked me to audit their application. So I've submitted the study and along with few questionnaires. So fortunately, they thought of using few things from my design audit to their business. They told me during the interview process. But after that first round, they never get back to me. I mean, with feedback or anything. Even I followed up with the same. So that's that I know. Like even I mean, in our country, like in India, it's more strict that like you're not likely to get feedback after the interview. So that's also there.
In most countries, you would not get feedback.
So, but I received like when I applied for remote jobs like across the globe, like they came back to me saying like this is the reason why we are not going with that. So.
And I think that is very nice of them to do it, but that is not the norm. Because the point is, in today's world where you're living in a world of social media and litigation and all that, you never know how somebody might react to your feedback. You might have given it with the best of intentions and you might have done it with the cleanest of hearts, but how somebody will perceive your feedback is completely out of your control. So you don't want to take that risk, which is unfortunate, but generally you want to say, listen, you want to set the tone when you're in the interview. So the way I would actually recommend you approach the interview is not say that I want the job. Okay. You say, listen, I know about myself, you know about the company, right? I see this as a conversation where both of us are deciding if it's a match or not. If it's not a match, it's not a match. I respect that. That comes across as a very mature way. So you're trying to put the other person at comfort with how you're approaching the interview process. Okay. And then when you're talking as equals, at that point, it becomes very easy for people to kind of tell you what they're thinking, isn't it? So it's a little bit about doing that. And it's also making it, especially when you're interviewing for experienced roles and all that, I've realized it is not all jobs are just the same for you, right? You may think the job is good, but, maybe it's not good. So it's okay. If you get rejected, that's okay, because you know that it was not a good match for you. So have that conversation, set that tone with the interviewer, and the interviewer will be a little bit more comfortable giving feedback. Cool.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Awesome. Thanks, Kranti. Go ahead, Saransh. You have a question on this topic?
Sir, I have a question. So, sir, let's say for a junior designer, and let's say they have 1 year of experience or so, something like that, and they saw a post where it has been like already mentioned that that the job is for like 3 years of experience, stuff like that, and you apply. So like the recruiter will even look at your profile as you already have you have only 1 year of experience. So like, do they even like look at like those profiles, or like it like they reject it like in like just?
It depends, right? It's a little bit of a luck kind of a situation.
Right.
Okay. So when you are, it depends. That's the best way. Like if the other company is a little bit more mature and they understand and they see a really stellar job, because most companies would not look at your resume first. They would look at your portfolio first.
Right.
It's an instinctive thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if so what they would do is they would just basically double click on your portfolio and see, okay, is this person good or not? Because the resume doesn't mean anything in today's world.
Right.
At least within the Indian ecosystem. Right. And I'm basically looking to see, okay, does this person understand? If it is intriguing and interesting, then I look at the resume and say, what's the background? Okay. So I would say you have a decent chance at getting noticed. If you think you've got an amazing body of work and you can make a really good, discussion and stuff like that, by all means, apply. There's no harm in doing it because, maybe the other person will like your work and want to take a risk and talk to you. And it's actually not such a big risk anyways, because if I'm getting 3,000 resumes and I'm only hiring 3 or 4 people, I have a problem, isn't it? So I might as well talk to you because, it's just that important for me to fill the roles. Right? Good. Awesome. So, Shehan.
We are a little over time, but we have one question from
and
the
this
YouTube
is the last
live.
question then?
We have more questions, but maybe we can address them in the next session.
Okay, cool.
So this one is from our YouTube live viewer. His name is Sehan, and he wants to ask, how do I get desired skills and expertise to master UX?
All right. See, there are 3 parts to mastery over any knowledge. It's knowledge, application, execution. Okay. So in any environment, right? I mean, this is something that is drilled in military systems where, knowledge, application, execution. Knowledge is, okay, how is a gun made? Okay. These are all the parts. This is the theory. This is what it is. Application is, can you take the gun, assemble it together and practice firing on a target? Okay. Execution is when your life is on the line and the lives of all the other people is on the line. Can you use that gun to save yourself? Right. That is execution. Okay. So if you are able to do knowledge, application, execution, you are good. You have expertise. Okay. The way you approach this is knowledge, right? Now, there's theory, there's content that's out there that you need to learn. So this is one of those things that I would just say, I'm going to just share my screen again very quickly. And what we have done is, I know this is all free content for you guys, by the way, right? So if you go into the designers on college.com and click on free learning resources, we have curated a bunch of content. This is all free for you to understand. This is the scope of everything you need to learn. Okay. To be able to be effective in a job, at least in your first job. Okay. So this stuff is minimum. Table stakes, what I've highlighted. Okay. So all you need to do is look at this and understand the scope of that knowledge. Okay. Then the next step is application. What you now need to do, and this is the harder part. Okay. So once you do this, the next part is you take this knowledge and you start doing mini projects. Okay. And you get feedback from designers. Now, one of the interesting things is this is an experiment we ran, and probably the next AMA or the one after that, we will have this team presenting their learnings, how should you learn design? Because the idea is, okay, we have ADP list. I could just go to ADP list and say, give me feedback about this 1 artifact or 2 artifacts. The question is, depending on who you're talking to, you'll get different advice, right? A better way of doing it is you basically go to a mentor and say, listen, I'm going to do this project. Can you give me 2 hours a month? And every 2 weeks, I'll come to you. I'll present the work. Give me feedback, tell me what I got wrong, and then I'll go redo it again. Okay. And then I'll come back to you again. And you do that month over month over month, in probably 3 or 4 months, you will actually have executed a really good project beginning to end under the guidance of a mentor, the same mentor, right? And ideally, you're choosing a mentor with 10 plus years of experience with that breadth of understanding. So that way, that person is able to very comprehensive feedback. Okay. Now that is something that I would just say, do that. So then you learn your application. Execution is you have to get your first opportunity, get in there and start executing. The other way of saying it is you might actually go to somebody and say, listen, I'm willing to work for you for free, right? Give me an opportunity. Or you can go on Upwork and say, listen, I'm willing to charge like $10 an hour or even $5 an hour. Give me my first project. Get your first couple of projects under your belt and you've proven that you know how to execute. Now you can start, whenever you talk to somebody or you get your, interviews or whatever, they know that you're a proven quantity. It's not that you're just starting off. And I think that's the way you want to think about it, Shehan, is think about knowledge, application, execution, and systematically go about it and get really good at it. Does that answer? Hopefully that answers the question. Cool.
All right. So we have 3 or 4 more questions, but obviously we are out of time today. So we are going to come up with another Ask Me Anything session very soon. And we are going to address those questions in the next session. With that, I guess we will end the session today. Prasad?
Cool. Yep. Thank you,
right.
guys.
Thank you, everyone,
thank you all
for
turning
joining.
on your cameras and asking your questions. This is always fun for me. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
We'll stop live now. Bye.